Okay, now we're live.
Hi guys, Leah Tallow. Of course with our Fortune Builders group and Marie's meetup. Thank you for hosting this evening.
Yes, thank you for hosting the house.
Yes, hosting in our house. We have an Airbnb that has all of a sudden become non-existent. So I'm going to introduce my business partner, Ruben. He's over here. And then we have a guest speaker here tonight that can talk to you a lot about converting your homes into some money-making machines through assisted living or through making it a group, some sort of a group home. So, Ruben?
Yes, hi everybody, this is Ruben for Huddle, and I'm just basically going to introduce our home here that originally was an Airbnb, and we're looking to switch it over to some type of a group home. And basically, the way we're going to be doing it is offering it to either assisted living or behavioral health or any type of that group home setting that we can possibly fit it into. And with the help of Derek here, Derek Earl is going to be instructing us and showing us the ropes and how to be able to do that.
Perfect. All right, Derek, you're up. Give everybody a little background on who you are.
Hi, my name is, like Mr. Farron said, my name is Derek Earl. I've been in behavioral health field for probably about 26, 27 years here in Arizona. So I've worked in multi-facet between from your residentials to your assisted livings to your RTCs. I do a lot of credentialing, so I'm very knowledgeable of how the credentialing process works, the things you need, depending on what level of care you're trying to do. So if you have questions, feel free to ask me. Kind of like what Ruben talked about, we had talked about some investment aspects of it, how some people, if they're looking to, if you're just looking at it from the real estate side of it, and you're kind of looking to double the market value of whatever something you may have purchased, working with individuals who thrive to open up group homes and stuff like that, or assisted living programs could benefit you as well. So just whatever questions you may have, just feel free to ask me, and I'll do my best to answer.
Derek, I have a question for you. You just talked about credentialing. What does credentialing mean? For some of us that aren't in this space, we don't understand what that means and how that applies to what type of home.
Well, credentialing is simply, it's going to build your stream of revenue. That's how you're going to get paid. So say, for instance, if you become an access provider, just use access provider. That doesn't mean that you are credentialed with every access plan that they have. So you have to individually credentialize your business with each one. So say, for instance, if you're an access provider, that doesn't mean you can do business with Care First. You have to be individually credentialed with Care First, or Steward Healthcare, or of course the Native American is fee for service, so that's a little bit different. So you have to be credentialed. That's just like if you want to do with commercial, your Cignas, your Uniteds. You have to individually submit what your business plans and the things that they require as far as to be credentialed with them in order to be able to provide services for their members.
So are those insurance companies that you listed off? Like, what is Care First and Steward Healthcare?
Care First is a component of Access. So Access has several different individualized plans. I mentioned a couple: Steward Health, Mercy Maricopa, Care First.
But Access itself is an insurance company or an agency?
Access itself is, if you want to use the word, governing party, and then
Okay.
you have
Gotcha.
everybody else that's a part of Access, but you still have to be individualized and credentialed with them. You just can't, just because
It's
you're a
the
provider.
state Medicare program?
Correct.
Yeah. It's the Arizona State
Most
Medicare
people, when they
program.
go down and they get credentialed and they think, I'm going to go down and be an Access provider. Now you are credentialed with Access. Now you have to go and get individualized credentialing with all the plans that they offer.
How easy is it to do credentialing, and what does it involve? Like, how long does it take? And
Well, the process is anywhere between 30 to 120 days, depending on, depending on the agency. You know what I mean? You have to do follow-up. You have to submit the paperwork, the requirements that they ask. It depends on what services you're offering. an assisted living program, then there's gonna be criteria, things that you gotta submit. I mean, of course, at the very minimum are the things you're gonna have, your insurance pieces, your, all of those other components that they require. Then you're gonna have to show your PPMs, which is your policy and procedure manuals. Like I said, it really just depends on what area you're going to specialize in for the plan.
Okay, so let's back up a minute and just explain to people what the different types of group home or assisted living facilities there are.
I mean, you have behavioral health, you have your general, you can specialize in, PCH.
What's PCH?
PCH, like personal care. That's basically if you have an assisted living and you specialize in personal care, that's basically just helping people with the ADL that need assistance with going to the restroom, just things like that.
Okay.
Skilled assisted living is different. You're gonna, there's different medical components that you have to provide. Behavioral health assisted living, there's other requirements because there's other certifications that the individuals that's going to be working for you have to have outside of your standard, CPR, first aid, ACLS, those sorts of things. They have to have certain specialized training to deal with combative people, or just individuals who suffer from different mental illnesses, schizophrenic, bipolar, you name it. You're going to have to know how to deal with them, and then there's certain classes that you have to take.
Okay.
So these credentials that you're getting for the house allow you to hire individuals that are certified to take care of these people?
Typically, yeah. The individuals have to have their individualized skill set. They're going to set, for instance, like a paraprofessional or a paraprofessional or a professional or a BHT or a behavioral health specialist, or there's different names.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm getting the I guess what I'm getting at is when I'm getting the certification, I may be managing these people because I'm the owner of the house and hiring them, but I'm not the medical provider. I'm not.
Correct. You're the owner. If you're the owner and you're going to hire people in specific roles, which they have to have specific education levels, things like that. So
that's the reason for the certification, so you know
correct.
who you can hire to do what.
Correct.
So I think there's probably two models that I've seen that are out there. One model is you're an owner-operator, and the other model might be that you're just the real estate investor.
Correct.
And he's talking about owner-operator right now.
Right. Well, even as yes, for the most part, he's talking about an owner-operator. But if you're going to be even the real estate investor, you have to understand what the operator's doing to make sure that you're going to get a return on your investment, right? Because you're going to buy the house or leverage and get the house, and he's going to operate in the house. And I think one of the things we were talking about earlier that Derek shared is that if you're just the real estate investor, there's two different ways you could do it. You could do it just as a rent, and double the rent is a pretty market norm out there. And then another way you could do it is actually a percent where you're doing a JV business. They're the operator and you're just a silent capital investor, and there might be some equity share type thing.
So if you're doing it as just the investor, do you still need these certifications, or would you?
The investor doesn't need a certification, but the individual that's going to occupy the resident does.
Okay.
All right.
The
Or
operator.
The
The operator
operator.
needs the credentials.
Yes.
That's what I. Yeah.
What is the investor's liability if?
Well, ultimately, you're the home. You're the homeowner. Ultimately, so you're trusting someone to come in and operate a business. So you have to have either somebody that has the skill set and the knowledge of understanding what needs to be done. Also, to kind of you mentioned a couple things as far as if the investor wants to be on one side of just being the let me double the rent type situation, or the percentage. In looking at the business aspect of it, from what I've seen in my experience, the percentage really doesn't work depending on what the percentage is, because it kind of sets everybody up I don't think that it sets everybody up to win, because it's very difficult for a business to come in and be based on a percentage level, because now you have to look at what you're gonna have to pay over your overhead, your employees, things like that. So that's why a lot of the people that just want to deal with it from the investment piece of it, you know, they just look at it. But if you want to get into other components, the percentage has to be fairly reasonable to set the individual up to succeed, which ultimately sets you up to succeed too on a business component aspect. You know,
Right, the operator has to still be making their fair
Correct.
share.
It has to
in
be
order get
reasonable.
them to-
Right.
Yeah.
you know, and the other component of it is, you want to, if you're gonna invest with somebody that you're considering, is invest with somebody that already has one. Because the situation that I find the most is an individual who is successful on one end and they're doing pretty good at their business, but the debt to income ratio prohibits them from being able to go purchase another home. So now, if they can get a rental home, then, you know, it's lucrative for them. But it's also lucrative for the person that's going to be the investor also. Because if you were simply asking for market value rent, and somebody's going to double that, and then you also give them the option to buy the property within a certain amount of time, you kind of set yourself up both ways on an investor aspect, because you're going to double your investment, and then you already have your buyer.
And we're talking about single-family residences that can be converted into these group homes. Do you need any special permits or anything with the city or county or anything like that?
Yes,
To-
you know, depending on what you're doing, you know, you're always going to do your due diligence first and check the city codes and see what you can put there, what you can't put there, what's already around you, because all of those components make a difference. But there's so many different aspects of that you can do with a residential home, where it doesn't have to be just residential. You know, people may ask me what I mean by that. But if you have a home and you want to do, you know, because you got places where your individuals go out to do different things. You can do those components inside your home too.
So like clinic services,
Mhm.
support services.
Support services.
Support
Services would be, you know, because a lot of the places, they don't have a lot of outlets, especially if you're talking about a 24-hour situation. So these 24 hours is basically the highest level of care that you can offer in a residential. Then you can break it down from a 24 to a 16-hour, and from a 16-hour to an 8-hour. Those are degrees of what services that you have to provide. So, you know, it's all different sorts of components that you can look at.
Do you want to give them an example of like how you're helping me out with Palm Lane, and then what we're doing with this house, and kind of how they tie together?
Well, what I'm going to do, or what I'm going to do with this particular situation is, because, you know, right now, being that it's a private paid situation, and I'm very familiar with I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Okay, so when you're looking at, I explained what access is, all right? So the people, they have what they call a REBA. So right now, Mercy Care is the REBA. So Mercy Care is the REBA that controls all of your behavioral health, you know, type of placements. So if you don't have a contract with Mercy Care, you know, it makes it a lot harder for you to, you know, to get, not credentialed, but the REBA is basically where you want to be. So with your particular situation, we're going to go the PCH route, which is personal care, where these individuals need basically kind of what I said, just help with their ADLs and things like that. And they have some what they call core-coring issues, so they're going to have some behavioral issues as well as some medical needs. And with the combination of the two, they make some very hard placements. So I'm almost 100% certain that I can get her, you know, some single case agreements until we can get credentialed with it. Because it's a need. It's a high need.
Right. And what makes a property good for a group home? Would you say that you're looking for any, like, would you say,
What's the
you know,
criteria?
right, like what's the criteria for
Well,
the home? Like, is it because it's maybe a bigger home that has 5 bedrooms, so you can
Well,
get
because
more cases in there?
you're gonna get the amount of people according to the zoning that the city is gonna let you have anyway.
Okay,
So some cities may not let you have more than 7, or you know, some 5, some 8, some 10. You just have to look at
okay,
the zoning aspect of it, and then of course your square footages are, you know, key. Because the more room you have
of the actual house, not the
of the
lot,
actual-
right, okay.
of the actual house, because you know you can do different things in the house.
Is there a requirement for square footage of a bedroom to put 2 people in a bedroom?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look the dimensions up, but, you know, actually they'll tell you specifically how many, because I've seen where you put up to 3 people in the bedroom. If the square footage is appropriate,
Supports
you can.
And so statewide, even though statewide defines residential group homes as 10 or less, you're saying the city overrides the state. So if the city says 7, and even though the
If they're gonna zone you for that, I mean, they're gonna look at the home.
Yeah.
And what that specific, because some cities won't even allow, for instance, and I recently learned this, that the city of Tempe doesn't allow sober living.
Really?
So if you are looking to do sober living in Tempe, I mean, you're wasting your time.
And then the other thing, and Marie had touched on this, is that there's also a requirement in each city of how far apart in distance a
It
group
is.
home is from another home.
Correct.
And so is that a city level check that you would do, or a state level
City.
check? City level check, okay.
The city will tell you, when you go to the city to do your zoning, they're gonna tell you exactly what's in your area. If it's something specific to what you're doing, similar to what you're doing, or they're gonna tell you exactly what's there, if you can do it, if you can't. Like I said.
But you do have to let the city know then what specific type of group home it will be, whether it's gonna be assisted living versus a sober
Absolutely.
house versus whatever. So you have to know that information when you call them to say, this is what I wanna do, and then they'll let you know
Yeah.
what that requirement is.
And then you apply for a business license, or the operator applies for the business license, but
Okay.
you need to know it before you're purchasing it.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, the biggest mistake that you can do is you go and you purchase a home in an area, and then you find out that you can't even do what you originally wanted to do with it. So now you have to.
Do people really do that?
It happens. It happens. Or things change, like what
Leah's talking about personal experience.
Or
She's
what
like,
is
ask me how I know.
or what a city used to allow, they no longer allow anymore because something may have happened.
Yeah.
You know, so those are components that would.
And is the requirement for having sprinklers, I heard it was five or more residents that you have to have a sprinkler system. Is that a city requirement or a state requirement?
City.
So the fire requirements in a group home would be something we would check at the city level.
They'll tell you exactly, because they're gonna say what you're eligibility zone for, and then if you say, well, what if I have the sprinkler systems, and then they'll tell you, but then it's gonna go to the square footage of the home also. I mean, you wouldn't put, a sprinkler system in a home that they're only gonna zone you for 5 for anyway, because if you're looking at the square footage and the dimensions of the rooms, it wouldn't make any sense to put, a sprinkler system in there. So you wanna make sure that you can even get zoned outside of your normal 5, based on the square footages of the resident anyway.
Right.
So if you meet the requirements to have more, then if you add the system, typically that'll be more.
Don't forget to lock your position in with the city, because just because you get an okay from the city
Hold on.
does
We're
not
gonna
lock you
go-
in.
We're gonna go there. Say that again. Say that again.
Sorry, Siri's answering me too. Don't forget to actually lock it in with the city. So when you're in there and you're inquiring about it, if they're telling you yes, that's a yes for just that moment. So if you don't sign that sheet of paper that's locking you into that position, they're not going to hold that spot for you, no matter what you're doing.
Sure.
So
That's
hard life lesson.
She
That's
knows-
a ninja tip.
So don't leave the office without signing something, is
Yes, do
that what you're
not
saying?
leave.
Liz wrote, "Ask you how you know."
Yes.
That's her favorite. She's like, "Ask me how I know." Personal experience.
Yeah.
And another way, it's you have to know what's offered out there. There's so many different areas in you know your residential centers that they offer so many different things. You have to know what they offer, because sometimes people don't realize that there's so many different things that you can tap into. What's billable, what's not billable, and then people miss out on those things because you're not fond or you're not aware of the codes, the CPT codes, and things like that. What you can bill for.
So also, just to point out, those are services that you do, correct?
Correct.
Like you will go in on a case-to-case scenario, go into the property and actually look at that property and then go straight to that city and actually speak to them about what's available and what's not available, how many clients you can have,
Correct.
that type of a situation, so.
So well, you're not setting yourself up.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to go into residential substance abuse, then now you're talking about beds. Beds. What beds are I'll use the word more valuable than others. I mean, you want to secure like your higher level of care, and then step them down, and then once you step them down to a sober living, then you go into your intensive outpatient program. So if you're a company that's going to be multi-fast like that and offer all of those different components in one company, insurance company's going to love you, because you can offer a very secure 24-hour level, and then once that person completes that, then they can come step down to a sober living level, and then go into your intensive outpatient program. So if you offer all three of those components, you're winning.
So are you an operator, or you, Derek, are you an operator? Like if I had a residential property, would I come to you and say, "I want you to operate this facility for me," or are you just the in-between services like Leah just talked about, where you just provide consulting
It
to
really
the
depends.
owners?
I can do both depending on. I'd have to look at what level it is, because I also have my own, sober livings and stuff like that. That's how. So I can do the consulting.
You do operate your own now?
I do.
Okay.
Do residential CCNRs, HOAs, cause an issue with group homes, or are they not allowed to restrict the use of a residential home in general?
Typically, depending on what you're trying to do, they don't really cause you too many problems once you go through the city. Typically, if you don't get any hardcore objections from the city, the HOAs on it, they're going to make you conform to whatever your parking structure is if you're in a residential area. So if there's no parking on the streets at night, your employees are going to have to park on the property or in the garage, so you're going to have to conform to those sorts of things. But as long as the city really doesn't give you an objection, typically the HOA doesn't give you any.
That's good to know.
Good to know.
Amazing.
Wow, there's so many HOAs out here. That was a good question.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're gonna make you conform to whatever the guidelines are. You're
Right.
not gonna be able to get away from those components, but typically if the city gives you the go, then you're typically all right.
So let me give you a scenario similar to Leah, where she has this beautiful home that's available, and she's trying to decide what to do with it. And let's say she wants to make it a behavioral health home or some type of level 1 24-hour care home. How would she go about finding an operator? She doesn't want to do it, she just wants to be the real estate backer. What recommendations would you have for us to find operators?
You of course you're gonna have people that advertise. You have to do your due diligence on the person, and ask the pertinent questions. Ask them some of what their outcomes are. Show me some of your success rates. Show me some some of your individuals that you can show their financials of how they've been productive or what because everybody can say they can reduce whatever, but the outcomes is gonna be what you're gonna base, what I would base who I'm gonna go with. Because anybody that's saying, hey, these are the things that I can do, they're gonna have some sort of information to prove that. know, I mean, I wouldn't go into any investment blind or without seeing someone's financials or seeing what they have done or who have you made successful, you know, and with that being said, resume. I mean, with that being said, the people that you have done work for is probably they're gonna pour out. Oh yeah, this guy has done X, Y, and Z. He's knowledgeable of this. He's knowledgeable of that. These are the things that when I initially did this, he found these things in credentialing, because credentialing is the very simple piece of it, but it's the relationship that the credentialer has with individuals. So if that person is consistently going to an insurance company and they are producing productive businesses, when that person goes back to that insurance company, it's a relationship there, so they're going to trust that person. And they're going to let them in a lot faster than somebody that they don't know. Because now what insurance companies are looking at is what services are they providing for my members? How effective are the services that they're providing for my members? How many of them, depending on what service you provide, how many of, when you look at recidivism, which means how many of the clients that I've sent to this substance abuse space relapse, how many rapid readmissions in the hospital am I having? All of these are components based on, the individual that you choose to hire.
Do I think you called it agencies? Do agencies look at and ask operators for their numbers and their outcomes data?
I mean, are you talking? I mean, if that person has a vested interest, I would think they would. But if they don't have a vested interest, I wouldn't think that they would, want to see that. I mean, if I'm going to invest in something, then I would definitely, ask those questions.
This sounds so easy.
It is when you get the right people.
What's the percentage of those types of homes that actually succeed once they get started with the right credentials, with the right operators, and so on and so forth?
100, I would say 95%. I mean, you'd have to really do something outside the norm, or you have to do something real negligent, or you have to, I mean, there's ways to lose if you're not, staying on top of what you need to. But otherwise, if you're credentialed properly and you're running an effective business, you're going to be successful. I mean, it's very lucrative. And the insurance companies, I mean, they're looking for ways to keep individuals out of the hospital. If you're providing them a service, I mean, outside of an assisted living, of course, an assisted living, that's a place where they're going to go where, that they can get that sort of care in a home setting. But when you're looking at the behavioral aspect of things or the residential components of things, they're looking at reducing the rapid readmissions into the hospitals. I work in a hospital. I've been working in a hospital for 15, 20 years.
Right.
So I'm looking at those components also. So that's how I can comfortably say what I feel is effective, what I feel is not effective, what the insurance companies are looking for, what they're not looking for in businesses that they're going to enter in a contract with.
Okay. There's one more thing I do want to throw in there. I know we're talking a lot of residential right now, but you and I have also talked about a couple of hotels or apartment complexes, that elderly buildings that you can snatch up on a good deal as far as, the investor side of things. But you've also managed those types of facilities as well. And I just want to throw it out there because I know that some of the people out there already own apartment buildings.
I mean, you have to look at, you have different layers, different levels of income base. You have, your income base that individuals that are on Social Security or SSD, that their funds are limited. But a lot of those individuals are not opposed to entering into semi-private situations or coming into a dwelling. Just say we're coming into a home like this, and you put them in semi-private rooms and things like that, and it can be lucrative for the investor. Because if you can get homes at flips at really, really low prices, and you can put, 4 or 5 individuals that's gonna share a home, and they're paying $500 and $600 for a semi-private room, and you're only in it for, say, maybe $1,000 a month or less, and you're making $3,000 or $4,000 on it. I mean, that's pretty decent, And you have you can just look at all different sorts of components. I mean, again, it's going to go back to the person that's knowledgeable who you're trying to deal with. I mean, probation offers so many different components of treatment or just placement. And then if you're offering that placement piece, and then you're offering counseling piece, those two components together, if you're an access provider, is very lucrative. So you just have to, it really depends on what you're looking for, or what you're open to.
How do we learn more? Is there information online that you would recommend, or how else would we be able to learn more about the different models and opportunities that might be out there?
It depends. Again, it depends on your target area. What area you're trying to. Are you going for probation? And if you're going for probation, then I would look under a lot of your government stuff. Your court systems. Your correctional facilities. If you're looking at more of your lower income people, then you're going to look at your, maybe Social Security stuff. I mean, there's all different, ways to look at it.
Well, okay, if I just want to be the real estate investor and just get, double market rent, the operator is responsible for everything on the business side, right? So placement,
Absolutely.
finding, the actual occupants or whatever.
You
It's
in
all
essence
on the-
would do a triple lease type net, like a
Like a triple net lease.
yeah, on that.
They're responsible for the proper insurance, the proper everything, because
You'd
that, I guess that was one of my early on questions too, was like, if I'm just a homeowner, do I need a special type of insurance, or they need it as the business operator?
They need it as the business operator, but if I had a home, I'd have that home in its own LLC, and I would have property insurance on that home, and I'd have a business insurance policy on top of it. Because even though they have a business policy, you don't
Protect.
you
An
would
extra level of
yeah,
protection.
I would totally have both on there.
Yeah,
So you want some kind of insurance if one of the people is clumsy and trips on the front doorstep and
Right.
breaks their nose,
Right.
it comes through the business.
Right. They'd hit both sides, but what's going to happen is they hit the operator's business
First.
insurance first, and then that insurance is going to come and have a discussion with my property insurance.
Because gee, you should have fixed that little loose nail or something.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's why you set it up almost like you were a commercial retailer, right? It's similar where they're leasing out that space from you, and while you're responsible for the structure, they're responsible for the business.
Correct.
And so it's a different type of insurance that you would get.
Okay.
I did learn that. I got that out of my little weekend.
Any other questions?
The question I have, you talked about semi-private and private rooms. To bill for a private room versus a semi-private, do they all have to have en-suite bathrooms, or can you have bathrooms down the hall and still be billing for a private room because they have their own room? Like, how does that work?
Through the insurances?
Just in general, as far as how
Because
much they're
typically
paying.
the insurances are going to give you, a specific rate. Now, whatever you define if you're private is how you define it. But when you're looking at it from an insurance perspective, it's going to be one rate.
So when you're saying private, would that typically be one person in a room?
Yeah, if you're going to say a private room, let's just say a person may have a master bedroom. Like some people, if you look at the way people are, I'm going to give you some, just say semi-private rooms, 2,500 private rooms, $4,000 or $3,000 or whatever, then the master bedroom is $5,000 or $7,000. You know what I mean? You can structure that as on a private level however you want to, but if you're going to be going through the insurance is going to give you one. You know, they're going to give it to you based on the individual, not what the.
So the insurance is just gonna look at the square footage and the individual's
So
needs and
if
say,
you have,
this is your
if
check.
you can have 2 people in the room and then you're billing, I mean, you're gonna bill for whatever that individual rate is that you have with the insurance company, which typically they're standard across the board, unless you're offering something extra. You know what I mean?
So realistically, when you're dealing with access, you're probably not gonna really look at private rooms a whole lot. You're probably gonna go, okay, what does access want,
You're
basically?
probably gonna be looking at more semi-private rooms type situations, or if you, I mean, that would be to maximize the amount of the space and of course the volume. Because if you just put one person in the room, you're wasting the space for potentially another person. So there goes revenue down, revenue that way.
Contracts that are in place with the excess payers, is it annual or is it longer?
Annual.
Annual. So every year you have to re-up your.
Yeah, you just gotta pay every year. But typically all it is unless you do something wrong, all you're gonna do is pay the fee again. They're probably gonna come out and look at your stuff over again, just like any other annual license.
And then
Is it each payer that comes out and does the inspection, or is it just one? It's each one.
well, when those payers are coming out and doing their inspection, if I was just an investor, would I need to be there or just the
I
operator?
mean, if you want, it depends on the relationship that you have in the in the business. I mean, if you're just if you're not involved in the business, you wouldn't
Just let
necessarily
the
have to
operator
be.
do it?
The operator would do it. I mean, but if you're if you're involved in the percentage piece of it, then I would be there. But if you're just on the real estate aspect of it and doubling or whatever we're talking about, then I probably wouldn't be there. But I would definitely come in and inspect the property or on a regular basis, to make sure that everything is
Well,
intact.
I would be interested in the result either way, because that's your income, so that, but.
And to be honest with you, what I've found on the properties that I've helped individuals with, when you're doing business with someone who already has a business, and they're treating this as their own, they're gonna make sure that it's taken care of because they have an investment in it. They have an investment in what they're doing with you, but they also have an investment of their own. So if something goes wrong here, then you still have the avenue to recoup from them, from what their own individual is. That's the difference between when I first described the program. People were like, "Well, no, I don't think that's going to be a good idea. If I rent this out." But to me, there's really no difference than allowing a property management to do it. And sometimes I feel the property managers are not even as effective as somebody that's going to be there anyway. Also, you don't just arbitrarily just pick somebody and say, "Hey, you know what? This person wants to do this," and put them in that position. You put somebody in a position that's already there and that's already knowledgeable of what's going on,
Right.
and you set yourself up to win and them to win. Otherwise, you set them up to fail. Therefore, you fail. So now you're gonna have to turn over and find some other avenue to make that investment that you already have work. If you're only looking at it from that perspective.
Interesting. Any other questions? No, we're good. All right. I guess I'll say goodbye real quick. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming in. There's a bunch of people still online. All right. Well, thank you, Derek. We'll post your information too, so people can reach out to you directly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yay!